Jordan and Gretzky, Serena and Ruth. Remembering great ones is easy to do.
But what about the no-names who spent their whole lives long snapping footballs and catching sack flies? They're guys, remember that guy. Remember that guy, remember that guy, remember that guy, remember that guy.
They're just gonna remember some guys now.
3-0 pitch is hit deep into left center field, and Bichette will look up, and father and son have hit back-to-back home runs. My, oh my. Etch that and remember that guy, the show where we mine our memories for nuggets of nostalgia about peripheral players past and present. Hey there, folks. It is me, one of your hosts, James here, and Guy, oh Guy, do we have a show for you today?
We've got quite a show for you today. Diaz with you once again, and we have a very special guest. It's not the Bichette that watched that ball go over his head. It is the Bichette who is the son of that Bichette that watched the father and son hit the home runs. Please introduce yourself.
Does that make me Bo Bichette? Because I kind of hate his hair. I'd rather not be Bo Bichette. I feel like there's another Bichette out there too. It's a third Bichette.
There is now.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's Dante Bichette Jr. That's right. But they are Brazilian, which is cool. Oh, he was drafted by the Yankees. Perfect.
Welcome, Dante Xavier Bichette Jr.
Indeed. And what, pray tell, is making memories for your sweet Brazilian self right now?
It's funny because I'm actually going to go to a different South American country because I want to talk about Linda Caicedo in Colombia. For those who don't know, because they didn't listen to me last week, it is the Women's World Cup right now. And last night, did I stay up to midnight to watch South Korea versus Colombia? Yes, I did. The reason being twofold. One, I wanted to see if Casey Fair got in the game for South Korea, which she did. The American-born teenager who plays for South Korea is now the youngest woman ever to appear in a World Cup. Just 16 years and 26 days old, which makes me feel like an old piece of shit. But on the other side of the field was Linda Caicedo, who also just a teenager, 18 years old for Colombia, and she's a star. She scored in the 2-0 win. She already plays for Real Madrid. Got her first call-up to the Colombian women's national team when she was 14 years old. She got cancer at 15, had to go through months of chemo, came back, has already beaten that before she turned 16 and was right back with the national team. So far this year, she's played in 3 different World Cups because she played in the Under-17 World Cup, where she scored 4 times. She played in the Under-20 World Cup, where she scored twice. And now she's playing in the Senior Women's World Cup, where she has scored in her first game. She is a star. She's going to be incredible, and watching her play is phenomenal. So I'm very happy I got to stay up and watch that game yesterday.
I mean, has a triple World Cup performance been done before?
So,
what's the historical context here, Xavier?
I'm not sure if there's been a triple. I know I watched Josh Sargent for the U.S. compete in the under-17s and the under-20 in the same year and then get called up to the senior squad, but there was no men's World Cup at that point. So maybe it's happened. I don't know, but either way, it's like it would be extremely rare if it did. But the Women's World Cup so far has been phenomenal. I've been really excited watching it. The Philippines got their first ever win early this morning. Philippine team is interesting because every single one of their players was not born in the Philippines. I believe that is the statistic I saw. And their goalkeeper, her name is Olivia McDaniel. She is the whitest looking person you would ever like. You would not be surprised.
She looks like Olivia McDaniel.
Yeah, if you thought she was Irish or something, everyone would probably say, yeah, that makes sense. So she is from California. She won player of the match in this win against New Zealand with a bunch of phenomenal saves. She was also one of the reasons why they made it this far with penalty saves in the quarterfinal match and qualifying against Taiwan. But the way she got into this squad, she's from California. Her mother is Filipina. Her father is a soccer coach. And the Philippines, were trying to build up a team, and they essentially were trying to get her father to help run it. And the fact that she was half Filipina, her mom was like, hey, why don't you bring her to camp too? And now she's the starting goalie for the Philippines. The woman who scored their only goal, Serena Bolden, also from California. So 2 California kids crushing it for the Philippines. It's been a really fun tournament so far. There's been a lot of really good moments. And I can't wait for the USA-Netherlands game, which should be really great and is the first time that the 2 previous finalists will have ever met in the group stage of the next tournament.
I also just want to say I love your implication in the way you listed the backgrounds of her parents, that like now when we go down the US Census, I'll be looking for the box that says soccer coach under ethnicity.
Well, as far as I know, he's just an American guy who happens to be a soccer coach who they wanted to help do stuff. It is funny though, because if you go,
he's not an orthodox soccer coach, but like he's still culturally soccer coach.
Okay, so I went to her Wikipedia page just to double check this. This is the sentence. Her mother, Lindy Isip, is a Filipina who has roots in Pampanga and Davao City, while her father, Clint, is a football, soccer, coach. So they don't give him an ethnicity. After saying the mother's ethnicity, they say he is a football, soccer coach. So maybe that is his ethnicity. Who knows?
His pronouns are football. Is that a thing? Can you say that?
I think that's a thing.
But yeah, it's been great. I've been really excited to see what happens. Soccer itself has just been like phenomenal. We had Messi in the Leagues Cup last week with the insane free kick to win it in stoppage time, causing everyone to shit themselves. Mbappe getting a $1 billion offer to go to Saudi Arabia for 1 year, which everyone is dying over because it's an insane amount of money and he's probably still not going to do it. A lot going on. And I think Diaz also had some soccer memories that he was interested in talking about.
Well, I mean, first of all, just a couple thoughts on the Women's World Cup. I think what we're looking at this year, this is kind of, whereas with women's college basketball, we're in the aftermath of the UConn dynasty now, where the entire game has been elevated by having that dragon to chase. I think we're now at that same part for women's football, where the U.S. has created this dragon that everybody's been trying to build up to beat. And now you have several teams that are looking capable and several countries that may not have had an interest in building a competitive football team before, but now are at the World Cup. So I think that's awesome to see. And because you got me thinking when you said that, Xavier, I started going through the Wikipedia pages for every player on the Philippines women's team because I thought, are they all just American? I did get to Meryl Serrano, full name Maria Meryl Christine Abrahamson Rosales Serrano, born in Veavagen, Norway. She plays for a Nordic club over there. So not strictly just pulling from that American pool. There's also a bit of the Philippine diaspora to the Nordic countries.
I think they have some like Brazilian expats on the team too. A lot of these teams are so interesting. Like I could go on about them. I mean, I read a great piece about the Vietnam players that I think I talked about last week. Also, the Moroccan team wasn't even invented until 4 years ago when the leader of Morocco watched some soccer and was like, hey, we should have a women's team. And so he just put a bunch of resources into creating a Moroccan women's team, which good, because within 4 years, they became the first Arab women's team to ever qualify for the World Cup. But there's a lot of great stories, and people should watch the Women's World Cup.
Watch the shit out of that highly competitive and meaningful soccer, but also watch the not meaningful at all, but it means that Premier League teams are in America soccer. The Premier League Summer Series touchdown in Philadelphia this past weekend. I got to see Newcastle play for the first time, which was awesome. Sometimes at these things, you worry they're just going to play like all the backups and it's not going to be anything really exciting to watch. But just about every player that you would want to see play for Newcastle, you got to see play for at least 45 minutes. Lewis Miley, keep an eye on him, only 17 years old, great in the midfield. 3-3 draw, that was awesome. And another thing that's making memories for me. So while Xavier stayed up late last night to watch Colombia play in the Women's World Cup, I got up early this morning to watch some championship boxing that was going down in Japan. And we have a contender. I had to retract a statement that I said a couple of podcasts ago where I said Alexander Usyk is no doubt the pound-for-pound best boxer right now. That title very clearly belongs to Naoya Inoue. Unbelievable performance by the boxer that his nickname is the Monster, and that is the only nickname that is befitting a person that is now a world champion in his 4th different weight class. Naoya Inoue first started off with a world championship at 112 pounds, moved up to 115, moved up to 118, and then moved up this morning to fight against Stephen Fulton, a West Philly guy. I was hoping he was going to hold it down for Philly, but it was one of those where the first round happened, and I said, I don't want to make any conclusions. And then 30 seconds into the second round, I said, Fulton's so clearly outclassed. Inoue is so far superior. And Fulton did well to last until the 8th round. Actually might have won the 7th round, but just devastating combos from Inoue put him down. He beat the count, but Inoue then came right back in, swarmed him, started tagging him with punches. The ref did the right thing to stop the fight. And Naoya Inoue he's doing things that we haven't seen since Manny Pacquiao was at his prime. And he's also doing it without being a homophobe, which I think makes it even more impressive and all the more commendable. We heartily endorse Naoya Inoue, and I'd love to see how much further in weight he can come up. The idea that a guy like Pacquiao made it to, I think 147 was the heaviest that Pacquiao ever claimed the title at after starting at similar weights to Inoue. So I don't know if that kind of thing is within his reach, but I mean, the guy's got legs built like fucking cinder blocks. He is an incredible fighter. One day he might be a guy, but for now he's going to keep racking up those victories and keep making memories.
I mean, he probably hopes that he doesn't become a guy. He probably wants to get to that Pacquiao level, I would assume.
That's
One
fair, but
cannot seek guy status.
Exactly. It merely comes to you. And I mean, let's be real. Mike Tyson is in our hall.
This is true.
For boxing, the babe line is a bit higher in boxing than it may be in some of our other sports.
Well, something that's very important about the babe line is also like the notoriety of the sport, which I think we discussed when we said it. Like, you can be the best at something that people don't care as much about, and that also helps skew it a little bit.
Of course, but I'm only concerned about the person who's the best at one thing right now, James. And that's the person that's the best finding their way into your hippocampus and making some memories.
I mean, it's the entire experience of an excellent June 24th Orioles-Phillies baseball game that was successful.
July 24th.
July 24th. Goodness gracious. You can see I still have not fully recovered from making my way to that game. But it was like an amazing crowd. Solidly, I'd say a quarter Orioles fans. That O during the anthem was loud. It was a great group of friends that the three of us were able to be there with all together. And it was a really great game. I loved that with our seats, we both got to see Jordan Westburg's first ever career home run and also not really see Jordan Westburg's first career home run because it landed directly beneath us in a deck. So I can't say I was there. I saw the swing, didn't see it come down, but that was a 1-0 lead. They would eventually win by 1. And one of the wildest things to me is that due to an Aaron Hicks injury, Colton Cowser comes into center field. And several members of the group of us that were there, Diaz and myself included, were watching Colton Cowser in a high A ball game 13 months ago, like John back and forth them at the on deck circle. And just incredible to see how quickly that has changed and how much he has come up. Incredible to see him under pressure, later deliver the game winning double. Now, we don't need to get into whether or not my body had allowed me to remain in the stadium until that point. What matters is that it happened, and it was great, and so thankful to all of our friends who joined us for that. Go Birds, baby.
I think your spirit is what willed that ball to just curve just out of Kyle Schwarber's reach, which isn't a lot of reach. So I think every little bit that your spirit was able to influence that ball was necessary.
Dude, there were some ghosts in the field last night. Jordan Westburg himself had fallen down while fielding just on the grass before hitting that redemption dinger. Trey Turner had a couple of those misplays. Like, it was messy for both teams.
It was the worst fielded 3-2 baseball game I've ever seen in my life.
Did Hicks officially break his arm? Do we know that yet?
It was actually his Achilles. It was the way he landed down on his hip. He has hit the IL. Yeah, he has hit the IL and is expected to come back soon. But it was his leg, the way that he went down. His arm, fine. Yeah, it is the Ryan McKenna return era now, which is not an era I want to focus on. Instead, I want to focus on what we have all convened here for today, if you all don't mind.
Absolutely.
So as we teased with that intro regarding the Ken's Griffey, I believe is how you say the pluralization of them. The Ken's Griffey are an excellent example of something that I enjoy very much and something that we've already discussed a lot here in this show, which is familial ties in sports. The lineages that get passed down, the names that keep popping up every generation or so. But specifically in our modern climate, there's a kind of lineage that I think has become only more and more prominent. And, I thought it was time that we take that concept and we turn that towards the world of Guy-dammit and see what we can come up with. And that idea is Nepo babies. I'm curious to see what the three of us today have in mind for the sports version of a Nepo baby, but I will go ahead and get things started. And I'm going to do that on October 8th, 1956. Do either of you happen to know off the top of your head what October 8th, 1956 is in the sports world?
It sounds like the Cardinals are probably about to win a World Series.
Is that Dodgers Yankees?
It is Game 5 of the 1956 Dodgers-Yankees World Series, with the series tied 2-2. And who, pray tell, is on the mound that day, Xavier?
On the mound that day, so that's 56.
Don't overthink it too much.
You're
Think
way
1956 World Series.
Oh, Don Larson?
It is indeed Don Larson. And behind the plate, one can probably surmise,
Yogi
Berra indeed. Now, here's maybe a little bit less known trivia. Do you happen to know the guy who comes up for the last out of that game?
Ooh.
It's not a big name, just kind of dude that's here.
No, I don't know that part, unfortunately.
I'll throw Pee Wee Reese out there.
Solid guess. It's Dale Mitchell. Dale Mitchell is this underrated, solid, longtime Cleveland outfielder. Really low strikeout rate, 2.7% over his full career. And that is in a career of over 4,000 plate appearances. He had, at this deadline in his final season, been traded to Brooklyn for this World Series. He comes up to the plate, and this is his second to last plate appearance ever. He does get called for a third strike. He tries to check his swing. The umpire says he went around, and that is the end of Don Larson's perfect game. The camera pans here in our mind's eye to the crowd. There we see a woman who, when Dale Mitchell came to bat, decided, Dale, I'm about 2 months away from delivering a baby. Dale sounds like the perfect name because it'll work for either a boy or a girl. Now, far be it from me to enforce gendered naming conventions. I do think a girl named Dale is kind of like a real life Johnny Cash boy named Sue situation waiting to happen. So I do think that we are largely as a society in luck that it is a boy. This is a boy that is given birth to by Carmen Berra, Yogi Berra's wife, on December 13th, 1956. And thus begins the Ballad of Dale Berra.
I'm excited to hear about Dale Berra, but Dale as a girl's name just sounds like if you named the cat Steve. You can name a cat Steve. I'm not going to say you can't, and I'm going to love that cat no matter what. But Steve is an interesting choice for a cat name.
You know what? The British have Ashley as a boy's name, so who am I to judge?
Look, Dale is Dale, but Dale is indeed a guy. And the Ballad of Dale Berra begins in the village of Ridgewood. This is where he is born, but then they very quickly moved to the township of Montclair, because I always like mentioning that New Jersey municipalities just have incredibly stupid titles. And unsurprisingly, Dale grows up in a big sports family. He is the third of 3 kids. They're all sons. He's got his oldest brother, Larry, who spends 2 years in the Mets minor leagues. He has a middle brother, Tim. Tim plays a season in the NFL as a return specialist for a truly awful Baltimore Colts team, but he does get to play for the Baltimore Colts for 1 year. And Dale is actually initially talented enough to have his pick of sports as he's coming up in Montclair High School. He has a total of 11 varsity letters between baseball, football, and ice hockey. But Yogi doesn't try to influence him too much. That being said, Yogi is a manager for the Yankees and Mets during his childhood as he grows up at various points. And so he does bring Dale around to locker rooms and even hires him as a bat boy 1 year. So Dale, not knowing that this isn't normal, was still probably a little affected in the fact that he does decide to go with baseball. He comes from the 1975 MLB draft that is considered to be one of the weakest in the history of the sport. On either side of this year, there are 6 All-Stars drafted in the first round, which is a little high, but pretty standard. There is not a single All-Star drafted in the first round of the 1975 MLB draft, but one of those picks, the 20th overall, is spent by the Pittsburgh Pirates on Dale Berra. And he actually says that being a first-round pick was even more pressure than being Yogi's son. But I would also say Dale Berra, that name probably played some role in you being selected in the first round. So who's to say exactly? But he is in the Pirates organization now, and he works his way up as a middle infielder through Class A short season the first year, normal Class A in 76. By 77, he is with their AAA Columbus Clippers. He's batting 290. He's got a little bit of pop, and he is like a solid fielding approach that can be moved around the diamond. He's basically the best player in AAA at 20 years old when that year second baseman Remy Stennett gets hurt. So Berra gets called up, and he makes his debut at third base against the Padres on August 22nd, 1976.
And not an abnormal ascension. This seems like it's about the path that you want your first round pick to be on.
Yeah, I'm 20 years old. 20 years old and debuting. Who cares that he bats 175 that year? Mike Trout batted like 170 something his first year. You've got a 20-year-old who's getting some contact in 17 big league games. That's valuable experience, and he's going to grow on that. 78, he does start in AAA for like a little bit more seasoning, and he excels there. He becomes the top vote-getting all-star for the International League that year, but does not get to play in the game because he's been called back up to Pittsburgh in July. When he gets back to Pittsburgh, he starts with a brutal 0 for 24 stretch. Does eventually, by the end of his 56-game stint, bat 207 altogether. And he is still a very flexible utility infielder. But Pittsburgh really feels like in order for this guy to be valuable, they need him to add some outfield to his repertoire. So they send him to the Vaqueros de Bayamon in the Puerto Rico Winter League.
Yeah.
Now,
Let's go Cowboys. Only time I'll say that.
This is why this might be a deal breaker for you guys, and I'm ready for that. But I think this is something that we need to mention because it has big Nepo-Baby vibes. Dale doesn't have a very good time in Puerto Rico, and so he quits and heads back to Montclair, New Jersey before the season is over.
I mean, if you want to spend your winter in depressing-ass Montclair, New Jersey, instead of the literal island of enchantment, you go right ahead, Dale. You're the crazy one. We're not the crazy ones.
No, I mean, it's a little nuts to me. The Pirates GM is not mad at him. He figured, like, look, we already had to kind of like push him to try that in the first place. But he does basically like take his ball and go home, very literally. And I just thought, that's very important as we build this case for him as a Nepo baby. This does not stop him from opening the season the next year for the first time on the MLB roster on opening day. He's playing third base and shortstop mostly until late June when he's batting 196 again. Pittsburgh trades for a two-time batting champ, Bill Madlock, and that basically pushes Dale down to AAA, which is now the Beavers all the way in Portland, Oregon, instead of at least being in like Columbus, Ohio, and not that far away. Lighten up the Pacific Coast League. He's too good for minor league. And as they're getting towards the end of 1979, Pittsburgh decides that they want to try and make sure he's postseason eligible, but they had completely neglected some bureaucratic red tape they didn't know about that was going to keep him from being able to come up to the big league roster until the AAA season ended. And so while he does come up in September 1st, and for what it's worth, plays pretty good for those last 30 games in which they win 20 of them to get to the playoffs. Hits 258 with a 272, 452 OBP and slugging. Good defense. He is not eligible to make the postseason roster. Just short of that cutoff, but the Pirates do initially bring him along in the dugout still, just as like an invitation. And then the commissioner's office narc, Frank Caston, says that, you could steal signs if you're in there and not playing. And so they make them kick him out of the dugout. That being said, the Pirates, they still love him. When they beat some team in the 1979 World Series, I'm not sure which one. We should probably look that up at some point, but they beat someone. They win the World Series. And the team does vote for Berra to get a full winner's share and a ring.
He's just a fun guy that they like, and not terrible. Solid enough that if you're on a 70s team, you could be the end of the bench guy as long as everyone likes you.
Absolutely. And this is the last year that he is not solidly on the team for his time here in Pittsburgh. From 80 to 84, he is just not having to bounce between AAA and the majors anymore. Mostly still playing third and short. Every once in a while, slide over to second if they need to fill in. And during this period, totally competent slash line, 243, 299, 350. It's an OPS plus of 80. If that's a good defensive utility infielder for you, that's fine. You take that every day. 20% worse than average is fine if you're providing the most. So which is why actually during this time of his 5.5 career WAR, he accumulates 5.8.
That math, it does math. But it's bad math for every year that's not that year.
Yeah. Two real quick fun nuggets before we blow past this. But in 83, he gets on base, and he gets on base in two specific ways very well. He leads the league in intentional walks for some reason. Like, this total wet noodle bat gets 19 intentional walks this year, which is also the year that he sets the record for most times reaching base by catcher's interference with 7.
Hey, you know what? That's a skill. That is indeed a skill. I've seen people who are very good at making sure that they reach back far enough where they're hitting that catcher's mitt.
He has these glory moments of on-base percentage, but it is kind of the peak of his time with the Pirates tenure. He starts to like consistently dip below the Mendoza line now for the rest of the season. And when he gets dinged up in August, misses some time, Pittsburgh decides they need a little bit more offense, so they start to look for a trade partner. Who would want this fine but largely unspectacular glove-first 27-year-old shortstop? Well, there is at least one team. Before the 1984 season, George Steinbrenner had removed Billy Martin from his already third non-consecutive term as the Yankees manager, and he had replaced him with a guy in his own second non-consecutive term. That guy was Yogi Berra. And so, wouldn't you know it, ahead of the 1985 season, New York swings a trade with Pittsburgh, swapping outfielder Steve Kemp and Dale's Pirates shortstop predecessor Tim Foley back to the Pirates for Jay Buhner, Alfonso Pulido, and Dale Berra himself.
Hey, that's a good trade if only they kept Buhner.
Yeah, on his face,
that's a really good trade.
Well, and let me tell you something. There's a moment that this is going to look like an incredibly good trade for a short period of time. Because while we will have the Ripkins and the Alous later, and technically Connie Mack's son, Earl Mack, played for Connie Mack a couple times as manager, but those were apparently just like publicity appearances to be able to say that that was going on. This is the first ever father-son management player. And finally, with a chance to like earn dad's love, seemingly he does a very good job. Through April, he's played 11 games. During this time, he has had a career-high 343 batting average. He's got an 800 OPS. He's almost exclusively over at third base now. And you'd think is a hot start. Yogi's probably a pretty happy dad with this all together right now. But the problem is the Yankees are struggling a little bit. They had just gone to Chicago hoping to kind of come back from an early 6-7 start. And instead, they dropped 3 straight games, including 2 straight walk-off losses. The team is now 6-10, and Steinbrenner said, enough. It is time to bring in a new manager. Sort of. We are going to bring Billy Martin back for his 4th non-consecutive term as Yankees manager to replace Yogi Berra, the man that replaced him. So, with that, Billy Martin's here. Great for the Yankees that year. They go 91-54 the rest of the way, but Dale Berra's bat drops off a cliff the second his dad is no longer his manager, and only ends up playing like 37 games between May and September, ends up with a batting average again below 200. It really hits a nadir in August. On August 2nd, 1985, there is a game against those White Sox, the ones that got Daddy fired. Dale Berra, Bobby Meacham, they're on base for Ricky Henderson, smokes one to left center, and Bobby Meacham trips while he's rounding the bases. And so by the time that he and the guy going behind him, Dale Berra, make it around to home plate, they've been bunched up so much that the throw comes into the catcher, Carlton Fisk, and he's able to tag them both out with comical ease from one side to the other, just in one fluid motion.
Like what you're describing, there's a scene in Major League where 2 runners for Cleveland both come home at the same time and they score. And I always thought that was like
the exact opposite of that.
Right. I always thought it was so unrealistic. I'm like, in what scenario are 2 runners going to be A, that close, and then B, the second one also got waived? Whoever the third base coach is, I'm not blaming Dale. I'm blaming the third base coach. Why are you waving this guy who is literally right behind this other guy who's also probably going to be out?
I mean, Diaz, didn't you just say yesterday if you were a third base coach to call you the windmill because you would only wave people home and never put up a stop sign?
And that's why he's not a major league third base coach.
And also, I don't believe we were recording then, Xavier. So I think that's what you would call hearsay. And I don't believe it's going to hold up.
It's not hearsay if I was the one relaying exactly what was told to me.
You heard it, and now you're saying it. You're hearsaying.
Funny that we should bring evidence into this, because surely things can't get any worse for Dale Berra after this. Speaking of things going worse for Dale Berra, on September 9th, 1985, that is when he testifies in the trial of Curtis Strong. Curtis Strong was a former Phillies clubhouse caterer, and as was becoming apparent in the investigation that this testimony was involved in, he was basically the cocaine dealer for Major League Baseball. This is the Pittsburgh drug trials, as you may otherwise know them. Strong and 6 Pittsburgh area men are basically accused of, they're dealing specifically in the Iron City of Pittsburgh, but like their effects were basically the distribution of cocaine throughout the sport. And this also brought up a lot of testimonies with players that were being pinged for this basically, that revealed kind of how prevalent the cocaine usage had been to this point. We've got John Milner, pitcher, talking about buying 2 grams of cocaine in a stadium bathroom during a game once. We have Keith Hernandez saying that probably about 40% of players were using it at any point. He walks that back quickly, but like the first thing you say is typically the true thing.
I mean, 40% of the Mets were probably doing that.
Like, significantly more than 40% of the Mets, dude.
Like Keith Hernandez was going based off of his own personal experience. I don't know if the Mets were representative of everybody.
Keith Hernandez is like Michael Jordan in The Last Dance, where he's like, yeah, when I was a rookie, all those guys were doing drugs and having sex with women, but not me. Definitely not Michael Jordan, definitely not Keith Hernandez. But as it turns out, definitely Dale Berra.
2 more definitely I want to mention real quick before we get into Dale. Tim Raines has testimony in this. This is a famous anecdote about him, and I just want to point out this is where it comes from. Do you know why he always slid head first?
Why?
Because there was a vial of cocaine in that back pocket at all times that he did use during games. Hall of Famer, Tim Raines, baby.
Oh my goodness.
One last person, Kevin Koch. If you don't know who that name is, you may know the job that he held at the time, which was the Pirate Parrot, the mascot.
I mean, who knows what kind of secret compartments those things have.
For Dale's part, he had gotten injured at one point in 84, and he talked about how like he'd struggled emotionally then, and with boredom, and clearly the ease of access to cocaine in the Pirates clubhouse. That was when he really took up the, we'll say, hobby. He does not bear any criminal charges for this. None of the players who testify have any criminal charges, but he is one of 7 players that received the highest level of suspensions from Commissioner Pete Uberoff. Hands down to these guys, basically like you're going to be out indefinitely until you meet a fine, meet certain community service requirements, continue to donate a certain portion of your salary in perpetuity to anti-drug organizations, and also have to submit to a lifetime of random drug testing. All 7 of these meet those terms. But to like many fans, I mean, this is the biggest black eye to the sport since the Black Sox scandal almost 70 full years ago at this point. And one fan would later go on to play in the majors, but he was quoted in 2002, "As a fan, you don't want to believe it. It's surreal. My hero was Keith Hernandez. If you had said anything bad about Keith, I would call you a liar. It tarnished the purity of the game." That is, by the way, a quote from Alex Rodriguez talking about drug use in Major League Baseball.
Even if it wasn't A-Rod, people have been finding ways to cheat for literally ever, and at least the cocaine isn't giving them performance enhancement. It's just recreational drug that's bad for them and illegal. They're not scuffing balls and marking them with literal feces to make them harder to hit, or, you know, sticking needles up their ass cheeks to make themselves hit a ball 100 feet farther.
Yeah, no, it's not PEDs. And to hear from Pete Uberoff, after these suspensions, baseball is drug-free. He maintains for the rest of his time as commissioner. And like several players come back just fine. Keith Hernandez comes back. He's one of those 7 players suspended. So for the record, he does admit also to cocaine usage. Dave Parker, Lonnie Smith, Hall of Famer Tim Raines, like plenty of the people go on to have great careers following this. Several of them also succumb to addiction and fall out of baseball, and in many cases pass away tragically. So like this is clearly a spectrum of outcomes that can have. And Dale kind of falls somewhere in the middle. 1986. Billy Martin has been replaced here at the Yankees by Lou Piniella, who is later going to be replaced in the offseason by Billy Martin, who then halfway through that next season will be replaced once again by Lou Piniella. So I just needed to mention all of that real quick. Largely that doesn't matter because on July 27th, 1986, Dale Berra, he's cut from the team. And he's, kind of tainted by controversy and washed. So what team is possibly going to give him another chance? I will give you a hint. After being fired by New York, Yogi Berra did almost immediately get a job as a bench coach for the Houston Astros.
Is it the Astros?
It is the Houston Astros, the only team that will extend Dale Berra a contract at this point, but they do bring him on. However, perhaps because Berra is bench coach this time and not manager, the dear old dad powers do not really seem to take hold. Like his rookie year, Berra's average is basically right around 170. So Houston crawls this like 3rd place, 76-86 finish It is going to end the Dale Berra MLB career. He does wrap up his pro career the next year. Plays for a little bit of the Orioles AAA season in Rochester. A very nice 69 games. Bats a very not nice 179 during that time. And I'm going to tell you what, if you can't make the 1988 Orioles roster, you're cooked. That was a very bad team. And so he seems to realize that, and that does close the book on the pro career. There is one last beautiful gasp of the Nepo-Baby life in his post-playing career. When he retires, all three Berra boys, they're all now former athletes. And so they form a company. They call it LTD. Yes, that can mean limited, but it's also their initials, Larry, Tim, and Dale.
I hope they incorporate it as a limited company, because then it could be LTD, LTD.
But I can tell you what the incorporation did, because basically it was, just managing autographs, corporate appearances, anything else that the public wants from specifically their dad, Yogi Berra. They basically just become like his PR agents for everything and manage to live off of the Yogi Berra travel circuit life for a little bit longer. Being the son of a 13-time champ has to be difficult to some extent. And Yogi might have been like short, but he was a very big character. He cast a long shadow. Something that Yogi Berra was very much well known for was his terms of phrase, his yogiisms. And this is not something Dale was super well known for, but there was one quote that I found that was like a perfect yogism that I kind of want to finish out. And I think it sums up the two of them well. He was asked by a reporter how the two compared. And what he said is, the only thing my father and I have in common is that our similarities are different.
It's a good yogiism.
It's a good yogiism. And I couldn't agree more. Yogi is an all-time great. And Dale's just a guy.
He's definitely just a guy. You neglected to mention, as I see on the Wikipedia page, that getting busted in the majors for being in a cocaine ring was not the only time that Dale Berra was in a cocaine ring.
This is true. Would you like to do the honors?
Well, again, and I'm not bringing it up as a pro or a con. I'm just saying it as a fact that, according to his Wikipedia page, in April of 1989, Dale Berra was charged with cocaine possession as part of an investigation into a drug ring that was distributing as much as $20,000 worth of cocaine weekly in North Jersey. Now, never charged, never convicted, 3 years in a pretrial intervention program, and all of a sudden, he didn't do any of those things. So he's all clean. He hasn't had any issues since then. But I did find that noteworthy.
I'm intrigued that you focused on that part, because I also was looking at the Dale Berra Wikipedia page. And the thing that interested me was that he has played more games than any other son of a Hall of Famer. Number one for sons of Hall of Famers in baseball.
Which is very nepotism. Like, I will admit, there is a specific reason I didn't bring that one up, and that is because it is a travesty that both Bobby and Barry Bonds are not in the Hall of Fame. Like, it is the one time that a record with an asterisk goes against a Bonds, but that record in particular should have a massive Bond-sized asterisk.
I mean, Vladdy Jr. is going to break that anyway, so it'll be fine.
True. He'll fucking...
Vladdy Jr. just has to play another, 300 games. So, yeah, he'll break that in 2 to 3 years.
Even then, let's be careful with our jinxing powers that we do demonstrably have here.
Hey, if I jinx the Blue Jays, I don't feel bad about that. Nobody needs the Blue Jays. Nobody needs Canada.
I'll leave it at no comment on that.
Toronto, at least, has had enough winning. Toronto can go.
Having now taken 2 straight weeks, I also am having a little bit too much winning. So let's go ahead and turn to some of the other guys that we have this week.
All right. So this is an interesting topic because unless you're talking about executives where there's a ton of nepotism, but a lot of those guys are still pretty current. I mean, what is it? The GM of the Hawks is 27 and he's there because of his dad. Nepotism is really bad in the management parts of sports. But when it comes to the actual athletes, you do have to have some skill for the most part. I'm sure there are instances where it's hey, I got you this opportunity, but usually if you don't have at least a little bit of talent, you're going to crash and burn quickly. But I did find something that I thought was very interesting that I wanted to bring up. So today I want to talk about Adam Anderson. And that name may not ring a bell for you, but that's because when he's competing, something else is usually getting the limelight. And that's because Adam Anderson is the driver for possibly the most famous monster truck in the world that was originally built by his father, Dennis. Adam Anderson is the driver of Gravedigger.
I just got the biggest smile on my face as you started building this up. I'm so fucking hyped to hear about Gravedigger.
So you will learn a lot about Gravedigger, a lot about Adam, a lot about Dennis. Adam was born December 5th, 1985 in Norfolk, Virginia. This was 3 years after Dennis had originally created Gravedigger, which he originally did as a mud bogger. In case you don't know what mud bogging is, essentially you build a large pickup truck and try to drive through a mud field and see how far you can go. If you can actually get through it, it's how fast you did it. I had a friend who was a mudder, and it is possibly the dirtiest sport in the world, as you may imagine. You get fucking caked in mud, but you can have fun. You kind of have to winch yourself out sometimes if you get stuck. But so he built this as a mud bogger. The name came from trash talking with his rivals, where he said, "I'll take this old junk and dig you a grave with it." So that is how Gravedigger the Mud Bogger came to be. A couple years later, in 1985, the same year as Adam's birth, Dennis rebuilt Gravedigger as a true monster truck with 66-inch tires and a new 1951 Ford panel truck body. 1 year later, the iconic graveyard paint scheme is sprayed on, and Dennis starts racing full-time. In a couple of years, Dennis and Gravedigger become pretty famous. This includes an appearance on an ESPN televised race against Bob Chandler in what was then the most famous truck, Bigfoot. And this kind of skyrockets Gravedigger and Dennis to, monster trucks were really big in the late 80s, early 90s. ESPN was real big into them. They were racing on TNT Motorsports. And, with Dennis fully in the monster truck scene, it's not surprising that Adam grew up surrounded by it. Whenever school was out, he would go with Dennis on tour. So Dennis and Gravedigger go on to win multiple championships across the TNT Motorsports Series, U.S. Hot Rod Association, which governs monster truck races, and the now current Monster Jam Series. Adam, having fallen in love with monster trucks, started doing pit crew work for other drivers, and eventually becomes a professional on his own and makes his debut in Monster Jam at the age of 19. When asked how he started competing on Monster Jam, he said, quote, "I pretty much had no choice. It's always been my life. It's all I ever knew. From the beginning, all I ever knew was Monster Jam trucks. It was the regular daily living that my dad created when I was a baby. That was the start of things back then. Now today, it's such a huge thing that my dad's created." I want to briefly talk about Monster Jam so the rest of what I have to say makes sense, because I highly doubt that most of our audience knows how you actually compete in the monster truck series.
Thank you. I did feel like I needed to know kind of like how does one win monster trucks?
Big car that booms best wins, right?
Okay, so Monster Jam events held all throughout America, some international events sprinkled in places like Germany and the Netherlands. Demand is large enough that there are usually multiple events held on the same weekend. For example, this upcoming weekend, the 29th, 30th of July, there are events in both Fresno and Allentown. The first half of the year is a more traditional season that's usually more southern locales, and it's kind of split up into multiple different tours, where they have the stadium tours, which are the biggest events that they break into the red and blue tours. So again, there's always something going on. And then the arena tours, which are regionalized, East, West, Central, International. And the top finishers of these different tours, more from the stadium tours, a couple from the arena tours, get to compete in the World Finals, which usually held early July. They were held 3 weeks ago this year in Nashville. Second half of the year is more of an exhibition showcase, usually in the northern cities that didn't get the full season.
We simple Yankee folk, we can't handle the actual points and stuff. We just clearly, as Diaz and I are showing off, want to see big trucks go boom.
Yes. So at the Monster Jam events, they face off in 3 to 4 forms of competition. I'm going to focus on 3: racing, two-wheel skills, and freestyle. Racing is traditional heads-up tournament race. It's a short track. Usually there is a jump, a turn, another jump. It goes very quickly, and it's 1v1. And it's bracket style. You go, keep it until there's only one person left. Whoever wins is the champion of that night. Freestyle is the second biggest, which is 2 minutes for stadium, 1.5 minutes for arena, where drivers go on an open floor with a whole bunch of obstacles and things out there, and they have to just do, a routine, almost like figure skating. You can kind of do what you want. There's no set path, but you'll see stuff like trying to leap over the biggest thing, backflips, double backflips. It actually gets kind of wild because the way that these trucks are set up, they'll look like they're going to flip over. Like they'll be like 3/4 of the way flipped over. But because of the way the wheels are set up, they'll bounce back right side up most of the time.
Important clarification I think I need for my full emotional understanding of this. Do they know what the courses are going to look like ahead of time? Are these choreographed routines or do they have to improvise them?
I believe they're choreographed routines.
That's amazing.
But of course you can, if something happens, you can switch it up, as needed. Like if you see someone go and you don't think your thing will beat their score, you can try something else. More like a half pipe in a snowboard where you might have a plan, but depending on what happens during the actual competition, you might have to try something new.
The choreography makes me want to see synchronized monster truck driving. Like we have synchronized swimmers.
Oh,
Yes, can I tell you that was
exists.
exactly in my mind? And I was like, I was certain Xavier was going to say, yes, this thing is out there, but it's also the number one thing I wanted to exist.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about it in a little bit too, actually.
I love it.
The other big competition is the two-wheel skills competition. This is monster trucks trying to perform their best moves on their sides, only on two wheels. So it's all about trying to do different skills only on two wheels. So you have to be perched diagonal in the air the entire time. This is a newer one, only was introduced about 6 years ago. And it's more of a fan vote than the other two, which have actual judges or, racing, you can tell who wins. This can kind of get lumped in with some other usually they like to have a donut competition along with this. Monster truck donuts are wild because the amount of dust that gets kicked up in the air is crazy. But those are the main things. So now that you know how a monster truck competition or event will usually go, we can kind of get back to Anderson. Adam makes his debut in 2005. Dennis is still racing at this time. Dennis will race to 2017, but Adam takes after his dad, and he ends up making a name for himself riding the Taz truck. And by Taz, I mean it was shaped like Taz, the Tasmanian devil, with a face and everything.
Crocky! 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 Crocky!
He's from Tasmania.
No, he is from Tasmania. 2007, Dennis gets injured during an exhibition tour to celebrate the 25th anniversary of Gravedigger. Because Gravedigger is so popular, he gets its own anniversary tour. So 21-year-old Adam takes over for a couple months, wins 6 stadium events, 4 freestyle and 2 racing. And then Dennis comes back and kicks his son back to Taz.
It's like Jay Leno and Conan O'Brien if Jay Leno was Conan O'Brien's son. Or, sorry, father.
So,
Conan O'Brien sprung fully formed from the split open chin of Jay Leno. I'm sorry, please continue.
So the next year, 2008, Adam does well enough to go compete at the Monster Jam World Finals 9 in Las Vegas. And he becomes the youngest champion ever at just the age of 22, winning the freestyle competition. His run has been described as one of the greatest freestyles in history. This included one specific section where he was only the second person to clear the triple bus stack, which, as you may assume, is 3 stacks of buses. It is very long. It is very spread out. I did not think that monster trucks can go that far in the air, but turns out they can.
They got hops.
They do got hops. So Adam wins his first finals. He does say that this came with, quote, the World Finals curse, because the next year he crashed during the racing part and was unable to have it fixed in time for freestyle, so he couldn't defend his title. Then World Finals 11, he crashed again after crossing the finish line in a race he won. So he wins, but crashes at the end, gets it fixed just in time for the freestyle, and then crashes less than 10 seconds into the freestyle section. So not the best 2 years for Adam. And in 2011, he's like, all right, I got to make a change. So he switches away from competing in Taz. And instead, he starts driving Gravedigger the Legend. This is not Gravedigger. This is the first official spin-off of his dad's Gravedigger, and was based on the original blue and silver paint scheme worn by Gravedigger in 1984 before it actually got the iconic Gravedigger paint.
Dude, that's such a called shot being like, yeah, I'm going to start driving the truck called The Legend.
It's Gravedigger the Legend, specifically all four words.
Oh my God. This is very good.
So he's driving Gravedigger Legend against his dad, who is driving Gravedigger.
Sure. Obviously, it's the multiverse.
So in 2013, gets back to the Monster Jam World Finals, and Adam and Gravedigger the Legend win the World Racing Championship. In the final, they beat Mark McDonald in the black El Toro Loco truck. And with this, he becomes only the fourth driver in history to win both a racing and freestyle championship. The other three were a driver named Tom Meents, a driver named Medusa, who also was a WWF champion, I believe, and then his father. Next year, he repeats at the racing championship, beating Tom Meents.
Beat those meats.
After beating his father in the semis. The semis of the finals were Gravedigger the Legend versus Gravedigger. After one more season of driving Gravedigger the Legend, Adam officially joins the full Gravedigger team in 2016 and takes over riding Gravedigger number 32. And that 32 is important to note because although Dennis has been driving Gravedigger since the 80s, these monster trucks take a massive beating. Even if you do everything right, they're gonna get like fucked up. So they have to be rebuilt like every couple of years. So every incarnation of the original Gravedigger is designated with a number by like the Gravedigger team.
It's like Uga.
Yes.
It's like if we were rebuilding Uga from the shattered parts of its remains instead of just getting a new dog. If we made some horrible Frankenstein Georgia Bulldog mascot.
It's very Ship of Theseus element.
Yeah.
So every incarnation of the original Gravedigger designated with a number, while any spin-offs of Gravedigger have a different name. And because, like I said earlier, there are so many events, and Gravedigger is the most famous monster truck, Monster Jam tries to have at least like one version of Gravedigger at every event. So this would mean Dennis would usually go with the best Gravedigger to whatever important event he chose, and then someone else would take an older Gravedigger to like one of the lesser events. And in 2012, at the 30th anniversary of Gravedigger, they even had a special event where 4 different Gravediggers did a synchronized thing and then crashed into each other.
It really is Enter the Gravediggerverse.
Oh, we're just getting started. So in 2016, while now driving Gravedigger, Adam wins the Fox Sports 1 Championship Series and then wins his 4th world title, getting a second freestyle victory at the World Finals. After this, Dennis officially retires. He had kind of been getting pretty badly hurt at his somewhat advanced age now, still driving into the 20 teens. And so Adam becomes the face of the Gravedigger team. In 2018, he again wins the racing title at World Finals 19, this time driving the newer Gravedigger 35. He beat his teammate Tyler Menenga in the finals, who was also driving a version of Gravedigger, Adam's old Gravedigger 32. So the finals were Gravedigger 32 versus Gravedigger 35.
This is the Buffalo statement again. Gravedigger, 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 Gravedigger.
Meanwhile, his brother Ryan won the freestyle title that year. Can either of you guess what truck Ryan was driving?
Gravedigger El Tercer.
James, do you have a guess?
I mean, I like that one. I think it's a good idea for them to start like branching out into, other language representation with the third one.
So Ryan was driving Son of a Digger, which is another Gravedigger spinoff.
That's going to be a tough one for largely white audiences to chant.
It is SON-UVA.
I think we're gonna run into a Colorado Rockies situation pretty quickly.
So Adam hasn't won any other World Finals titles since 2018, but he's still like a pretty popular driver. But I would like you both to guess how many Gravediggers competed in the field of 24 at the Freestyle Championship at the World Finals just 3 weeks ago.
I'm going to say firmly half.
I was going to say lucky number 7, so I'll undercut you a little bit.
All right, both a little too high, but every member of the Gravedigger team did qualify for the World Finals, and the answer is 5. So Adam came in 11th, competing in the standard Gravedigger. Meninga came in 10th with Gravedigger Purple, because at the World Finals, to distinguish the Gravediggers, they give all of the non-standard Gravedigger a different paint scheme. Teammate,
so fucking for real. They're just doing palette swaps.
Teammate Brandon Vinson was in 22nd with Gravedigger Red. Adam's sister Kristen, who is also part of Team Gravedigger, came in 18th with Gravedigger Pink. Adam's other brother, Weston, came in 4th with Gravedigger Orange. And Ryan did come in 5th with Son of a Digger, but it's not the true Gravedigger, so it doesn't count. But there were 5 Gravediggers and a Gravedigger spinoff, 4 of which were being ridden by the children of Dennis Anderson.
Seed is strong.
Like I said, to start off, Nepo babies in sports I feel are a little difficult because you have to have at least some skill. But here, if it wasn't for Dennis Anderson literally building Gravedigger first as a truck and then as a team, I highly doubt that Adam, or any of his siblings for that matter, would be making a career as monster truck drivers. So it really is a situation where
he did kind of paint him into a corner.
Due to the nepotism that we have a team of Gravediggers of the Anderson children led by Adam.
No, I love it. I mean, nepotism doesn't have to be a bad thing. Nepotism can be a good thing.
It can be very entertaining.
And it can be very entertaining, which is, I think, the most important thing.
Do you have anything to entertain us with in terms of nepotism tales?
Absolutely. So I want to take kind of a different spin, I guess, on nepotism than both of you have. I think in both of your instances, you laid out cases where these were guys who had abilities in and of their own right, but were certainly helped along the way by those familial ties. And I want to talk about a guy who actually was shunned by the family at first, but still found a way to make it forward in their sport. To set the scene, it's March 16th, 1996. Hall of Guy inductee Mike Tyson is attempting to reclaim the heavyweight title in just his 3rd fight back from prison against Frank Bruno. This is a pay-per-view event. It sells over 1 million buys. But there wasn't really a lot of drama in this fight. Tyson very quickly got a knockout. So this wasn't the fight that people were talking about the next day. We want to focus on a fight on the undercard of this event. In one of the undercard fights, we see Christy Martin, aka the coal miner's daughter, going against dangerous Deirdre Gogarty of Ireland. This is a women's fight. They're only 2-minute rounds, and it's only scheduled for 6. But these two women are going crazy on each other for the duration of the fight. The crowd is already at a capacity by the time this fight starts. Everybody's hooting and hollering. And up to this point, women's boxing has kind of been a bit of a sideshow, not really looked at seriously by anybody. But all of a sudden, these guys who came to see this fight very quickly realized this isn't a sideshow. This is a slugfest, and it ends up being the best fight of the night. Critics go on to say this was by far the fight of the night. There were no belts in women's boxing at the time, but so much notoriety was gained from this fight that the WBC, the World Boxing Council, would afterwards grant its inaugural women's belt to Christy Martin. And just a week later, she would grace the cover of Sports Illustrated. The cover would read, "The lady is a champ." And basically, this fight becomes the fight that puts women's boxing on the map. Now, this fight didn't just leave an impression on the national consciousness. It also embedded itself in the mind of an 18-year-old nail salon owner who had never put on gloves before. She was so inspired by seeing these two women put on such a captivating performance that she wanted to try it herself. And so began the boxing career of the third woman to ever be inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame. Having held 5 belts in 2 different weight classes, she is the first woman to ever headline a pay-per-view event by herself, retired with a perfect record of 24-0 with 21 knockouts. She was known in the ring as Madame Butterfly, but you'll most instantly recognize her last name, Ali. I want to talk about Laila Ali.
It's a good.
It's a really good one, especially when you figure the backstory, because again, the initial assumption here is, okay, grew up around boxing, taught it from an early age, all of these kinds of unfair advantages. But we'll start back when she's born. She's born December 30th, 1977 in Miami Beach, Florida, to her father, Muhammad Ali, and her mother, Veronica Porche Ali. Veronica was the third wife of Muhammad Ali, and unfortunately for their relationship, she wasn't the last. They got married shortly before Laila was born. They made it about 9 years until they got a divorce in 1986. From there, Laila would go on to live with mom and is largely raised by her mother, grows up in her mother's home. Still has a relationship with dad, but she's definitely closer with mom, predominantly raised by mom. Like some other children of divorce, you may expect, Laila was a bit of a rebel as a child. When she was 14, she actually stole her mom's car just to get a getaway, get out on the town. This was kind of the final straw for mom. So mom not only wasn't at all sympathetic to her, she actually encouraged charges to be pressed. And Laila goes to juvie for 30 days after stealing her mom's car.
Damn, that's very strict parenting.
Very strict parenting. Laila would later write about some of the abuse that she suffered in juvenile hall. So was it for good? Was it for bad? Who are we to say? All we know is mom thought she needed to be taught a lesson. When she comes out after these 30 days, she definitely doesn't want to go back. So she starts picking up various jobs. At 16, she becomes a nail technician. And by the time she's 18, she's saved up enough money to start her own nail salon. And she's also going to enroll at Santa Monica College in California. That Martin Gogarty fight that I mentioned at the start happened her spring semester of freshman year, and she's instantly hooked. She starts training in secret. She doesn't tell her mom. She doesn't tell her dad. She just starts training in boxing. And part of it was just because she knew basically what her dad's reaction was going to be. Muhammad Ali was a devout Muslim at this point in his life. With that comes certain views on what the role of women are. And as Laila would put it, my father didn't believe that women should be in boxing. He was a little bit of a male chauvinist in that way. So she knew dad wasn't going to be happy about it, but she keeps training in secret. And she doesn't want to jump right into a major payday either. It would be very easy to say, in 1996, is when she first starts training. Almost immediately, just based on her name, she could get a quick paycheck to fight anybody. But she wants to do it right. She wants to hone her craft. And after about 2.5 years of training, she goes on Good Morning America, where she's interviewed by Diane Sawyer, and she announces her intention to go professional in boxing. Dad's still not approving, but he will be in attendance when on October 8th, 1999, just however many years after Don Larson threw that perfect game, she makes her professional boxing debut in Verona, New York at the Turning Stone Resort Casino. She fights April Fowler in her first fight. Now, there are Peter Buckleys out there who are trained professionals who are trained to take a loss. And then there are April Fowlers who basically look like somebody called them 3 hours before the fight and said, hey, I know you got to pick the kids up, but how about you get in a boxing ring real quick? April Fowler is not in shape, not a game opponent. Laila Ali makes very quick work of her. In 31 seconds, the refs waving it off. But this performance, seeing his daughter succeed in this way, was enough to win Muhammad over. He was in tears in the locker room after and gave Laila his blessing to continue with her career. From there, she rattles off 4 more straight knockout victories, none of them against really significant competition at all. But again, the way it works with an early boxer's career, you got to pad up that record, got to get some wins on there. The sixth fight is where she actually runs into probably the most drama she's going to see in her entire professional career. She's fighting a woman named Karen Bill. Karen Bill is just your standard journeyman professional boxer, never a champion, but certainly no slouch. In the second round, Karen lands a straight right to Laila Ali that wobbles her. She goes giraffe legs for about 2 steps, and then she falls over. To her credit, very quickly gets up, holds her own the rest of the round, makes it to the bell. In the third round, they're trading punches some more. Layla's getting the better of the exchange, but Karen's still fighting back, no doubt about it, still very much about. And then the ref decides to get involved, decides to wave it off and says that Karen Bill's taking too much punishment, even though Laila Ali was definitely in a worse spot just the round before, but calls the fight. And Laila Ali, albeit somewhat controversially, maintains her perfect record, moving to 5-0 with a TKO victory in the third round.
You hate to see the refs insert themselves into the game like that.
No, it's really unfortunate. But I mean, especially you need to, there's these things where the ref didn't necessarily need to have been offered a payout, but the ref knows I'm doing Laila Ali's fight. And if Laila Ali wins, I might get to do more Laila Ali fights later. So it's just
it's Peter Buckley. The refs there, the official, they all know what the people are there to see.
Boxing kayfabe. We as a show are going to expose the true spread and scourge of boxing kayfabe in the world.
There's no way to expose it because everyone knows that it's there. We've just got to a point where we don't really care. We'll have people chime in for a minute. Like that fight last week. I'm trying to remember what the name of the challenger was, but he was going up against a much more highly fancied opponent. Most people believe he won. One of the scorecards had him losing 9 rounds to 3 and ended up losing by majority decision. Things like that just happen in boxing. The only way to make sure that you don't get screwed over is knocking them out.
Right. It's an unfortunate reality. And maybe this is the first time that we see in our story where Laila is the beneficiary of that last name, of that nepotistic effect. But all that matters in boxing is that O. O's on the end of your paycheck, O on the end of your record. She moves to 5-0. She rattles off 4 more victories. Only one not by knockout, but it was not a controversial decision. It was a fight that she definitely deserved to win. And now that she's at 9-0, there's a lot more eyes that are on her. First of all, her level of training is going to take a step up. Roger Mayweather takes notice. That's the uncle of Floyd. Roger, in and of his own right, a great boxing trainer. He starts training Laila Ali. But it's not just the people that want to help her that are noticing. It's also the people that want to fight her. And here enters Jackie Frazier-Lyde. As you may gather, and in keeping with the theme of this episode, Jackie Frazier-Lyde is the daughter of Joe Frazier. I don't know if this was a chicken or the egg thing, but Jackie's career did begin just 4 months after Laila's did, and it's a very similar path. 7 fights against far inferior opponents, 7 knockouts, but at this point, you got Laila Ali at 9-0. You got Jackie Frazier-Lyde at 7-0. There's clearly some money to be made here. There's a fight to be made here.
There's a fight to be sold at the very least.
There is definitely a fight to be sold. And it's no wonder that with the tagline of Ali Frazier 4, Laila and Jackie do schedule a fight. And this is the first pay-per-view to ever be headlined by a woman's bout, is Ali Frazier 4.
It's an excellent little nugget.
And look, it's one of those things where would there have ever been a women's fight on pay-per-view without this name sell to be able to open the door for them? I'm not sure. I've talked to this podcast before about the pay-per-view between Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano last year, which is probably the best bout in women's boxing history. The process towards that being a fight that headlines a pay-per-view begins with this fight between Ali and Frazier.
You do sometimes have to take the doors that are open.
Exactly. Take the openings that are there. And the build up to this fight is a little bit the opposite of what it was when their fathers were fighting. Jackie's taking kind of the more verbal, antagonistic role, and Layla's trying to maintain that quiet confidence. And when they get in the ring, they know talk is one thing. Talk sells pay-per-views, but what happens in the ring is what gets people to stay. And both of them, for their part, although they were probably not either at like an actual championship level experience level at this point, they know they got to put on a good fight. And that's exactly what they do. They go the full 8 rounds, and basically it's rock'em sock'em the whole time. Both of them are very badly beaten by the time it's done. Frazier Lyde's eyes are nearly swollen shut. Layla has a fractured left collarbone. She also has a bloodied nose. I mean, both of these women are just beaten the fuck up. It comes to the scorecards, and by majority decision, they do give the decision to Laila Ali. She moves to 10-0. It is worth noting, though, it's not like Jackie Frazier just, had her career, got this payday, and got out. Jackie Frazier still went on to become a very legitimate women's boxer in her own right. Her last fight, she would claim the heavyweight championship, and then she would retire. So she did become a world champion. And while they definitely fought at this part in their career where they weren't as refined, they both continue to blossom from here and become absolutely worthy of the names and what that would imply in the boxing world. Understandably, after having a broken collarbone and a bloodied nose, Layla takes a little time off to recover after this fight. She takes almost the whole calendar year off before she comes back. She gets in the ring and she fights Shervelle Williams. Goes the distance again, not able to earn the knockout, but she does get the decision. Not at all controversial, earned decision. And this sets her up for her first shot at a world title. The IBA does not currently have a belt that they offer at super middleweight, but they want to start one. So they mandate the fight between Laila Ali and Suzette Taylor for the inaugural super middleweight title in the women's division. You may expect this to be a good dramatic fight. It's not. Layla is kicking her fucking ass from the open bell. She makes it through to the first bell. Suzette Taylor does not make it to the second bell. The ref waves it off, and Laila Ali is now a world champion after her 12th professional fight, having won by technical knockout. There's still 2 more belts, though, in this weight division. So she wants to go ahead and unify those belts with her next fight. She's going to fight Valerie Mahfoud. It's a competitive bout, but later on, Layla's dominance starts coming on, and she gets a technical knockout in the 8th round. She now adds the WIBF and the WIBA titles to her arsenal, so now holding 3 world championship belts. Her next fight, she's going to go back to her dad's hometown, Louisville, her first time fighting there. She gets a TKO in the 4th round against Marianne Amelger to defend those belts. Then she gives Mahfoud a rematch, and she wins this by TKO in the 6th round. So at this point, she has dominated the top 2 contenders in her weight class. She fought a third person, Marianne Amelger, that she also TKO'd in the 4th round. Very quickly, she's running out of people to fight in her weight class. So in boxing, if you don't have a matchup to sell, you sell a story. They already did this with Ali Frazier 4, but now what better story could there be than to have Laila Ali fight against the woman who gave her the inspiration to pick up the gloves in the first place? Christy Martin is named as Laila Ali's next opponent.
Well, darn, you already spoiled a little bit because I do know she finishes undefeated.
She does finish undefeated, and I just want to give further context to this fight. All of the press and all of the building up of it is this is the biggest fight in women's boxing history, and by name brands, it absolutely is. Unfortunately, we're not quite talking about Juan Manuel Marquez fighting against Tyson Fury, but we are talking about a significant weight gap. For context, that infamous fight that put women's boxing on the map. Christy Martin weighed in at 135 for that fight. For her career, she's in a 135 to 145 range. Laila Ali holds her belts at 164.
God
So
damn.
we're talking about a 30-pound natural weight difference here. Now, obviously, Christy Martin's able to pack on some weight leading up to this fight. It's not all natural. It's not all good weight. And, I mean, she is just noticeably smaller in the ring. But they do a good job selling the fight. The pre-fight press conferences get a little chippy. There's some pushing back and forth. But in combat sports, big is going to beat little almost every time. Martin does a great job to last 4 rounds because I watched the fight. It ain't easy to watch. She's getting beat all around the fucking ring. She has a couple moments where like she lands like a good 1-2-3 combo, and you think, oh, that should hurt Laila, and it just doesn't. She just like Terminator style walks through it, delivers her own punishment, and in the fourth round, Martin finally succumbs to just a flurry of punches. Immediately gets back to a knee, but in the corner is her trainer and her husband, Jim. Jim's telling her to stay down. She obliges, and Laila Ali wins by knockout in the fourth round of this dream matchup. Before I go back further in on Laila, I just want to brief aside on Christy Martin, because someday or another, I'm going to give you guys the long version on Christy Martin. I'm just going to give you the elevator pitch right now on why she is an incredible guy. She's the first woman ever inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame. Her husband and trainer, Jim, after she retired, would stab her 7 times and shoot her, trying to murder her in their family home. Oof. She survived. He goes to prison for 25 years. After they get divorced, she then marries Lisa Halwin, who she beat via unanimous decision in a 10-round bout just 2 years before she fought Laila Ali.
I get out of that elevator with you to hear the rest of the pitch.
We'll expand upon it on a further date. But for now, we'll get back to Laila. And again, after this fight, she's in the prime of her career. There's really nobody equivalent to match her up with. She's in a class by her own. Her next 2 title defenses, she wins by knockout before she says, I've done enough at this weight class. I want to go up a weight class, try to get a belt there. So she goes to light heavy to fight for the WIBF title. She fights Gwendolyn O'Neill, who she beats by knockout in the 3rd round to now claim a world championship in a second different weight class. This is her 4th belt. Her next fight, she's going to go back down to super middle, and in Washington, D.C., she fights Erin Tofill for the inaugural WBC super middleweight title. Again, dominant victory, TKO 3, not even close. She would defend these titles 3 more times, winning all 3 of those fights by knockout, with the final being just 56 seconds into round 1, a TKO victory over Gwendolyn O'Neill, who she'd previously fought for the light heavyweight title. And at this point, it's like, what are we even doing here? She's dominating the division, cycling back through opponents whose asses she's already kicked just to further kick more ass. There's kind of no point at this point. She's done everything there is to do. She's beaten everybody there is to beat. And so she does retire at the age of 29 as the undisputed champion at super middleweight. But with the brand that she's built, she's now in the national consciousness to a certain level. And there's still a lot more that she can accomplish. Coming right off of her boxing retirement, what's any great athlete going to do after they retire? They're going to go on Dancing with the Stars. She competes in season 4. Despite having no prior dance experience, she earned the first 10 of the season. She would, however, suffer her first professional loss when she came in 3rd place on season 4 of Dancing with the Stars. The winner that season was Apollo Ono, and also Joey Fatone finishing just ahead of her in Dancing with the Stars.
Joey fucking Fatone.
So, as delightful as that is, that's not where her TV career ends. The next year, there would be a reboot of American Gladiators. She would co-host this with Hulk Hogan. The reboot, not too successful, only made it about a season and a half, but she did form a close friendship with Hulk Hogan. And in the later interview, Hulk Hogan would actually credit Laila Ali with saving her life because he was very depressed, was considering doing some things that he shouldn't have done, and Laila Ali basically talked him out of it. So Hulk Hogan gives his credit to Laila Ali for why he's still here.
End up being in the minus category.
It's
No, I won't say that. He's Hulk Hogan, like, is the ultimate reason why an early initiative by Jesse Body Ventura to unionize the wrestlers at the time ultimately failed because he narked on them all. So that's really like the ultimate Hulk Hogan thing. But you know what? That happened years before. We'll allow it.
And either way, I think we're glad he didn't end hero out there.
There we go.
But he had that stint with Laila Ali on American Gladiators. Her TV career continues even today. In 2017, she got her own show on OWN, the Oprah Winfrey Network, called Homemade Simple. To my best research, 9 seasons of that show that are out. Just, telling you how to make your home life simple. And one more fun little kicker. Shortly after she retired, July of 2007, She got married to Jets legend Chris Conway. Played 1 year of receiver for the Jets. He had about an 8-year career. They got married in July of 2007. They have 2 kids now. They have a son who is about 14 years old and a daughter who is 12 years old. As I mentioned, she was the 3rd woman ever inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame. Her class in 2020, kind of similar to that 2020 NBA Hall of Fame class where you had Duncan, Garnett, Kobe. This class, you had Laila Ali, you had Vladimir Klitschko, and you had Floyd Mayweather. So 3 undisputed greats of their sport, all going in together. Today, Laila Ali has her own health and wellness brand. You can go to LailaAli.com, check all of that out. She sells some different spice blends, sells different nutrition products, some training programs. While she certainly would not have gained the notoriety that she's achieved without her name, I think Laila Ali is a great example of a person that tried to forge their own path, ultimately got that calling to come back into the family ties. And then even despite her father, with his misogynistic views, trying to say that women cannot be boxers, she was able to somehow change his mind. Muhammad Ali, one of the most stubborn men in the history of America. And if you're able to change his mind, you have a pretty strong influence. I think Laila Ali is an example of the good that can result from nepotism. And I also believe that Laila Ali, within the realm of sport, is wholeheartedly a guy.
Is there? I do have to say, like, Laila Ali is probably the most famous female boxer of all time. I'm not saying she's the best, but she's almost certainly the most famous. And I like Laila Ali a lot. And I liked watching Laila Ali fight a lot. But I'm like in that spot where she might be too good to be a guy. And also just from the Nepo-Baby angle, like, yes, there was the Frazier fight, but there was no nepotism that helped her break into the industry. It was, in fact, against the wishes of her father at that point. I like Laila Ali, but I worry about, does it fit the Nepo-Baby topic? And is she too good to be a guy?
I will admit I am more concerned with the former. I am more concerned with, was there sufficient nepotism? She's a beautiful pull yourself up by your bootstraps story, the kind that we love here in America. But unfortunately, that wasn't what we were looking for this week. I fully acknowledge that you are correct. The name opens doors. And I also do very much appreciate the angle that it is a force of good in a way, because that initial battle between her and Frazier does have this big pioneering moment. You're not wrong that there is still absolutely nepotism there. Is there enough nepotism? Is my question to you. But Xavier, I have a question for you as well. With what we now know about the Gravedigger Bat family, my concern with Adam is there's so many people receiving the nepotism in the larger Gravedigger family. Can any one of them truly rise from the morass of it all?
Well, I think the fact that Adam was the first and also the one given the actual Gravedigger to ride differentiates him. Like, Ryan obviously is a little different because he specifically chose not to use one of the Gravediggers. Adam is the only one that is really taking over for Dennis in the, I'm going to be in the biggest events riding the Gravedigger, the car that his father built for, like, and leading the team that his
father built this car.
Like, there is no, if not for Dennis Anderson building a mud bogger and then deciding to turn it into a monster truck, we don't have any of this. Like, it is like the literal definition of, like, benefiting from the work of a parent.
My thing with your presentation, Xavier, while it was excellent, I found myself most drawn to Gravedigger. I think if you presented on Gravedigger the vehicle, I would have been more inclined to vote yes and to get our first non-sentient being into the hall.
Do we know for a fact that it's non-sentient? Can you confirm that?
You never know.
It's a Herbie fully loaded situation.
Could be.
Well, so here's, I think, the ultimate thing that I'm thinking. In the case of Anderson and Ali, they both used that name to reach great heights. And maybe Anderson a little bit less because he hides behind the identity of Gravedigger.
Which, if you're going to go with that, he's hiding behind the thing his dad built.
Sure.
So I think it works either way.
Absolutely. This is merely bringing up a different archetype of Nepo baby, which is one that occurs to me a lot more often. And I think would just steer me towards Dale Berra a little bit more, which is someone who doesn't really have a whole lot of skills. And for that reason, cannot be elevated that highly, but is just so thoroughly secure in their job because of their connections that they're able to hang around forever with, say, a career OPS plus of like 80 and decent fielding metrics.
See, I was thinking about that with Dale, and I agree that the last 3 years of his career with the Yankees and the Astros, that's 100% nepotism.
Absolutely.
But from what you said, like he was an extremely talented prospect who was drafted in the first round by a team that did not have his father on it, and they were willing to give him a shot from a young age because of his talent. And even though he never quite made it there, it was less of a benefit of the nepotism until later in his career when it was clear that he wasn't good enough and was just sticking around because of his father. So it's like a later years nepotism type thing.
Absolutely. Like he is able to hang on for the name value if it is not necessarily what gets him through the door first. And I'll admit, like, yeah, no, there's no way. Well, we say there's no way, but whatever bug there was within Anderson the Elder that sparked the creation of Gravedigger, we can't rule out that such a bug is deep within the brain of the Anderson family and would have come up later on. We can't definitively say that if such a thing would occur to the fathers, such later things would not occur to the progeny.
And allow me to just submit, unless I have this wrong, Adam Anderson is still very active and competing.
He's going to be active for like 30. You drive monster trucks until you get so hurt you can't do it anymore. Gravedigger has been around for almost 40 years at this point. Like, there will always be a Gravedigger as long as Monster Jam exists. Adam, he'll be there another 30 years. Like, but we've gone away with they have to be retired if it's for a sport that is not as in the public conscious. So I don't really count that as a negative anymore.
Sure. And you cannot be too good to Guy in a sport with as low of notoriety as women's boxing either. That would be my counterpoint.
I think that's a very good counterpoint.
It might be more of the fact that you and I are bigger, as big fans of boxing as we are, that my thing of Laila Ali being too good to be a guy might just be because we like boxing a lot.
And again, I know Laila Ali. Like, she reaches a level of notoriety beyond standard women's boxing.
Which, in part, again, another thing that we love is the second act. What other additional fun details do we have? We have married to an NFL player. We have third place on Dancing with the Stars behind Joey Fatone. We have a show
Here's one
on
thing that I
Winfrey
did
Network.
note, though. Sorry, one thing that I actually jotted down real quick while you're talking about Dance with the Stars. We do know for a fact that Laila Ali is not as good as at least one Hall of Guy inductee currently. Because Stephen Bradbury was able to beat Apollo Antonono, and Laila Ali did not succeed in her opportunity to do so.
No, it's very true. It's very
Also,
true, and that's a serious mark.
You also didn't bring up, look, we have Dance with the Stars all the time, and I love a good Dance with the Stars appearance here on this show. However, you didn't mention perhaps our first ever Masked Singer appearance.
Oh, yeah, she was on season 2 of Masked Singer as well. I did have that in my notes. I just glossed over it.
She was the panda. How could you forget?
Sad panda.
I'm coming back around to Laila Ali a little bit. I can't in good conscience vote for one of my guys for a third week. I simply cannot do that. If the two of you outvote me, that's whatever. But I am going to, I think, have to go with one of your two. And give me a final pitch.
My final pitch is that Dennis Anderson literally built Gravedigger both as a truck and as a team that his children now benefit from as their entire career. I know you said like maybe they had this bug. Like, no, the Gravedigger idea is solely due to Dennis Anderson, and now the fruits of his labor are being enjoyed by his children, who essentially were born into this role.
And for Laila Ali, I would say that while her introduction to boxing is not due to nepotism, she never headlines a pay-per-view if her last name isn't Ali. And she also doesn't headline that pay-per-view if her opponent's last name isn't Frazier. Despite her entirely evident skill. It took the benefits of nepotism for her to be able to shine on the stage. While her talent is in and of itself, and originally without her father's blessing, there's no doubt that we would not be talking about her today if her last name was not Ali. So made it on her own, still benefited from nepotism. Everything comes up. Layla.
Diaz, unfortunately, I think you made one fatal flaw, which is that you did specifically bring one of her opponents into the final argument for it. And while I think you're absolutely right,
nepotism.
On behalf of nepotism, but after all, there is no relationship between Laila Ali and Joe Frazier. I get it. I think, though, well, it was certainly all on point in the end. I mean, look, man, could you name a monster truck other than Gravedigger before this episode?
I couldn't name Gravedigger before this episode.
Dude, you didn't know Gravedigger?
Dude, Big Cargo Boom. I don't care what it's called.
I was surprised.
It's just from all the commercials between like Simpsons reruns.
It's all over the place.
Gravedigger.
Well, far be it from me to continue digging my own grave. It does seem.
The one last thing I want to say, it is a difficult vote. I do still think it is tough to learn of this full Bat family and only uphold the Robin. I do think it's the best example of nepotism we found today, and Adam Anderson seems to be the best avatar for that example.
Diaz, would you do the honors?
Well, I mean, to me, it was an honor to bring up Laila Ali, and I think we fought really hard, and we did everything we could to get her into her second hole. But alas, big truck go boom, and nobody can argue that. Big truck go boom, Gravedigger, the most illustrious vehicle in the history of monster trucks, as I learned like 30 minutes ago. And that's why right now it's our great honor to welcome into our Hall of Guy the operator of many different parts of the Gravedigger family, but most importantly, the guy behind the wheel, the guy in the hall, Adam Anderson. Welcome to the Hall of Guy.
If we'd gotten through the full Vingo Bogate episode and voted him in, and then Xavier said at the end, "Oh yeah, never seen Wild World of Sports."
I mean, I do think Wide World of Sports.
You've definitely seen Gravedigger before, even if I'm
going to say the same thing you did. I have not.
Well, so I sent on X, Twitter, whatever the hell it is, videos of a Taz performance and a Gravedigger performance, so you can see what it actually looks like. Because I feel like once you see it, you will get I've seen a commercial with that in it at some point. You watch enough sports that you probably would have seen it at some point.
Yeah, like have I ever...
That's when I'm on X during commercials.
Do you think that he's got so many advertisers out that if we actually wanted to put some money towards it, we would probably get good value for it at least. We will never do that, but what we will do is give some thanks to some folks that have deserved it. Among those, our producer Craig and all the coders behind Craig, our musical director Don Ham for all that lovely theme music. And once again, I just want to thank all of our friends who came out to an excellent game. And I will also mention, we discussed that this would be used to once again make some donations towards local abortion funds. So all of them that we mentioned, the Delaware Abortion Fund, Baltimore Abortion Fund, and Philadelphia Liberation Abortion Fund, are all going to be continuing to receive those $11 monthly donations for the 110 miles. And we'll also be doing for the miles we spent in state, 18 to PA, 33 to Delaware, and a whopping 58 to Maryland. I did not realize that that's how much of it was in Maryland. Goodness gracious.
Maryland big.
Maryland not even that big is the thing, man.
Maryland weirdly shaped.
Maryland indeed weirdly shaped. But hey, if this sounded like something that you would have been interested in following, you can, of course, join our Discord and hear all of the stupid things that we have to say about sports outside of the 2 hours where we record the stupid things we have to say about sports. You can find all the information for that and everything else at bit.ly/rememberthatguy, all one word, all lowercase. That's all I got. Anything else from you guys?
Watch the Women's World Cup.
Thank God USA plays at 9 p.m.
Thank goodness. I am glad that we will be able to watch at a reasonable hour. We will go ahead and watch that. But until the next time you listen to us, I've been James.
I've been the very special guest Xavier.
And I'm Diaz. And as Muhammad Ali once said, I am the guyest. And I said that even before I knew I was. How far did you bike today?
I did not.
That's fair.
No writing today.